Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are in the world. My name is Jessica, and this Kiwi did pretty well in December, I'm not gonna lie. Welcome to a new year, everybody. It's 2024. So today we're just going to go through my December TBR, what I read, if there were any surprises, and if I read any of the books that I pulled, which, spoiler alert, I didn't. I read the Kiwi Book of the Month, and that was it. I got really busy preparing for Christmas and family and stuff like that, and also reading for the December round of Bookemon to get my starter Bookemon. I have to say, I'm really surprised that I read so many books during the month. This is absolutely not normal for me and what I do. So we started off the month by finishing off a few books that I had half read and I needed to get finished. So they either made it onto my shelf or off my shelf. And they were Eagle Unplugged, The Saviour's Sister, and the London Sound Society. I do have a video right here if you would like to check that out. I was also lucky enough to receive a copy of Stars and Tides by Lachlan Blake. And I read that. I gave it 3 stars. I also read Taste by Stanley Tucci, which I gave 4 stars. And this was a surprise for me because I'm not an autobiography girly. Non-fiction is usually quite boring for me, but this was such a great read. And because I had it on Audible, listening to Stanley Tucci narrate it and telling his jokes the way that they were meant to sound, it was actually really good. I want to buy the physical copy of the book. Taste to me was almost half autobiography and half recipe book because he gave so many recipes for authentic Italian dishes and how to make them, at least from his family, the proper way. Like, for example, he speaks very passionately about ragouts and which pastas to use for which dishes and the real way to make an Alfredo. Very good book. I highly recommend it. I read A Very Mummy Holiday by Lynn Cahoon. I gave 2.5 just because it was kind of forgettable, about a group of friends that go to the Oregon coastline and have a holiday. And they stumble across some human remains after one of the group is kind of, I guess you could say, bullied off the sand dunes by a gang of some sort. And they roll down the dune, and just as the husband is trying to get out of this buggy, the wife finds this finger with a giant ring on it, and it's decomposing and it's kind of mummified and gross. And so they go about trying to solve who that is and how it happened. The gang that was there to me was kind of college kid mentality, like, oh, this is our beach and yada yada yada. They were trying to be intimidating, but to me, it just didn't land properly. But I was quite glad to move on pretty quickly after reading that. I also read The Art of War by, and I apologize if I butcher this name, but Sun Tzu. And I gave it 3 stars. I'm not gonna lie, 98% of this just went straight over my head. I read this for read a book in public that you are embarrassed to be seen with. reading prompt for Bookemon, and the real reason that it was embarrassing isn't because of the book itself, but my comprehension of it. And it was embarrassing because I had no clue what I was reading. I can understand why it's such a classic book, though, and it's very well respected in the literature community. And then I read Crooked Kingdom by Lee Bardugo, and I gave that a 3.5. It was okay. I really didn't like Six of Crows, and the reason for that was the multiple POVs. There were lots of scenes where they could have just been chapters with like all of the different characters in them instead of having to be a particular POV. And so both Crooked Kingdom and Six of Crows had that POV system. I think there was also a mild attempt at building romances between some of the characters, and I just don't think it was executed very well. It was hard for me to pay attention to this one, to be honest. It was better than Six of Crows to me because I understood the world a little bit more. Maybe one day I'll do a reread and I'll appreciate the whole series a little bit more, but for now, that's just going to have to go off my shelf. And for our Kiwi Book of the Month, I read, in quotation marks, The Probable Life of Ricky Bird by Diane Connell. And I am very disappointed to say that it was a DNF. Yes, after starting off so strong with November and The Whale Rider, we ended up going the complete opposite direction this month and kind of bombed with this one. It was just so boring. I was doing some reading sprints with Brittany Loves Reading, and that was a part of Bookemon as well. If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have got so much of it read. But in the end, I just had to because it was wasting too much of my time. The most interesting thing that happened in that story was Ricky's little brother got very sick and ended up in hospital. And by the time I finished, he had come home from hospital, but they still didn't know what was wrong with him, or they weren't telling Ricky what was wrong with him. I don't know whether he got better or whether he got worse. But apart from that, nothing really happened in the story. It was kind of like, you know, when you were in English class and you were kind of made to read these books to do book reports on, and you just kind of slogged through them because you had to. It was exactly like one of those. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of those because right at the very end of the book, there's a whole book discussion and questions around certain themes that were in the book. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this actually was used in high schools or schools around different countries. But yeah, I got about 65-70% of the way through it and went, nah, can't do it. And so that was, how many books was that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Holy shit. That's 9 this month. That's really, really, really good reading month for me. Wow. Cannot guarantee that that's ever going to happen again. I'm wondering if perhaps because I read so many books this month that it contributed to some of those lower ratings. And maybe I just didn't appreciate some of the books as much. I don't know, we'll see, because this next year is going to be incredibly busy when it comes to reading, and I'm so excited.
So this is a different day.
I was a dork and didn't realise that my microphone needed to be charged, and so while doing these picks, it wasn't actually picking up any sound. So I had a whole bunch of footage that had no sound, and hence I am having to refilm. So you won't get to see my looks or surprise when I pick these books out of the jar, but I do have them here for you, and I will tell you about them. So our first pick from the TBR jar was The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And for this one, I'm reading it for the fossil prompt for Bookemon, which is to read a historical fiction. And this one is about love and overindulgence in the 1920s, I believe, and it follows Gatsby, who is head over heels in love with a Daisy Buchanan. Yes, and they were lovers previously, but I think she's either engaged or she's married to somebody else, and they live across a pond or a lake from each other. And so there's shenanigans and adventures that happen within these books in order to try and get her back. So this is The Great Gatsby by Scott F. Fitzgerald. So for our second prompt, we got Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. And I was quite intimidated when I got this. And then I had a look, and Inkheart itself is 320 pages. So I can do that. I can do that. So we follow Maggie, who is obsessed with book. She loves reading. Her father loves reading. But she soon discovers that her and him have the same ability where while she's reading one particular book, then whatever they read out loud comes from the page and into their world. But there's a price to pay with that, where something from their world will always be pulled into the book's world. And so this magic book is called Inkheart, hence the name. And so we follow Maggie trying to get her father back, essentially, and all the adventures. And I would assume there's more to it than that. So for Inkheart, I'm reading for the Legendary Necklace prompt because it has rings on the cover, and you've got to read 4 books for this, each with a different piece of jewellery on the cover of the book. And so that is rings on the cover for Inkheart. And so the third book that we pulled was Babel. Again, we actually pulled it out of the jar. It obviously really wants to be read, and I'm no less intimidated by this than I was last month. But I really am going to make a concerted effort to get to it this month. Or next month. No, this month. So you heard me talk about Babel when I first pulled it, and it was rather ineloquent, so let me try again. This is a dark academia historical fantasy, and where we follow Robin, who has been taken from an orphanage in Canton and raised in Oxford, eventually attending the university there. His learnings consist of language, translation, and there's a little bit of magic in there somewhere. And I believe there's some kind of, I'm assuming there's some kind of secret society as well. So that is Babel. Very excited, very intimidated. I have to read this because it is my acorn prompt, which is reading a popular book. And if anything is a popular book, it's Babel. Our Kiwi book of the month, which I'm hoping is going to be better than last month, is Ocean of Milk. So this will be filling another Bookemon prompt for a book with a pretty cover, and pretty cover is very subjective in here. I think it's a very pretty cover. You've got mother and I'm assuming son because she has two sons. She loses all of her memory. She wakes up in hospital. She's got no memory, and so she's trying to navigate the world with no memory and getting to know her family again. She's wanting to write a book, but as she's going through this journey, she is getting abilities that she never had before. And so she's wondering whether she's had some kind of transplant or something, and it's not entirely her. And so people around her are thinking that she's gone mad. I think this will be a very interesting book. I have never heard of this author, so I don't know what her writing is going to be like. Quite big margins and things like that. So it should be relatively easy to read. That is Ocean of Milk by Belinda Eichrig. However, these books are not my only TBR for the month. I've got quite a few more as Bookemon kind of starts and gets wrapping up. We've got even more prompts that keep coming, so the month gets busier and busier. So we have these 4 books. I'm also reading, and I just started this morning and it's turning out to be really good. I am reading They're Watching You by Chelsea Acaso. By Chelsea Acaso. And I'm reading that for Buzzwordathon from Books and Lala, and also TBRathon, which is hosted by Leandra and the TBR Zero. And this was required to participate in as a part of Bookemon to get one of their little creatures this January. Also for TBRathon, I am going to do a reread of Akamath, A Court of Mist and Fury. By Sarah J. Maas. I think we all know this one. And this will be fulfilling the prompt of next in a series. I am also halfway through reading the autobiography of Nikola Tesla, and that is the Ant prompt, which is under 100 pages. For some of the longer prompts that require several months, I've started doing the volcanic prompt, which is 6 books from 6 different book clubs in as many months. And that is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow for hashtag a yearathon, I believe, is the group on Goodreads. I will post everything down in the section below. This is a lot of information. So for Chicken Prompt, which is a book with orange or yellow plus black and white anywhere on the cover, it doesn't matter how much, and that is for every single month to read something with that. And so for January, I'm reading Out of Orange by Clary Walters, and it is an autobiography of her life where the character of Alex Voss from Orange is the New Black was based off. So that's all my top priority ones, and there is also some more that I want to read this month. I'm starting a new series, So there's a lot of books for me to read this month, and I'll try to get to them all. So yes, that is my humongous list for the month. Let me know in the comments below what books in this list have you read and what did you think about them. As always, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.